Hello, Garland Nixon here, and once again we find ourselves at the bunker at an undisclosed location. Um, Witkoff had an interesting meeting with President Putin, and I think he gave Trump a little bit of breathing room, not much, but whatever. Let's see. Rumble's having some trouble. Well, whatever the case, we're going to talk about the meeting. We're going to talk about what's happening. Let's talk. Hello, Garland Nixon here, and we're going to talk about Witkoff's meeting the Ukraine and everything that's happening right now. Very interesting time. So, here are my thoughts. Number one, Trump was in a bit of a corner, right? So Trump had painted himself into a corner, shall we say? Whereas he said, Russia better do X by this date, some drop dead dates. He better do such and such a thing by such and such a date, or doggone it, I'm going to have to take major action. And of course, as you know, the neocons were thrilled. Lindsey Graham was on the air. Oh, we're going to whoop Putin's ass. And Putin, oh, we're going to India. We're going to get them too. And, he sounded like the old witch in the Wizard of Oz. We're going to get you and your little dog too, right? Oh, he was just happy in all of his evil rants. He literally said, we're going to crush China's economy. We're going to crush India's economy. Of course, Russia, that's a given. We've already crushed their economy. Everybody's economy is going to get crushed, except ours for some reason. And now we got Trump where we want him. He's backed into a corner, right? Now, if you follow my channel, here's what you know that I say. Notwithstanding all of Trump's bluster and how his stunning, shall we say, level of incompetence at times, I'll say this. You can't back Trump into a corner. And I'll tell you when I realized that. I tell you when I realized that you can't back. I mean, it's just a reality. And here's why. When I realized it, and it's so obvious. When Trump a while back and he said Zelensky's a dictator. Well, no, he's not a dictator. He's a puppet. There's a big difference between a puppet and a dictator. He'd have to have agency to be a dictator. He'd actually have to be in charge of Ukraine to be a dictator. No, he ain't a dictator. He's a puppet, right? But the only question, the argument now is who's he a puppet for? But any way you look at it, he's a wooden puppet, right? And not a very good puppet, but whatever the case. So Trump said he's a dictator. And then so a week later, he's being interviewed and someone says to Trump, one of these reporters, so you said Zelensky's a dictator, at which time Trump said, did I say that? No, I didn't. Basically he blew it off. And at that point, it was obvious to me. I just watched this guy in action and I said, you can't ever back him into a corner. Because he's a gaslighter. And let's face it, I am certainly not qualified to diagnose Donald Trump emotionally. But if somebody forced me into a corner and said, you have to diagnose him, I'd say he's a narcissist, malignant narcissist. I don't know, but he's somewhat of a could be other things too, but he's a narcissist. And here's the thing about a narcissist. One of the tools necessary to be a narcissist is what? Gaslighting. That comes from a movie like back in the 1940s where some guy was trying to make his wife seem like she was crazy by basically saying that reality wasn't reality. So gaslighting is what? It's just telling somebody that reality isn't reality. If you can say something to someone and yell at them, you jerk. And when the person says, you yelled at me and called me a jerk, you simply say, no, I didn't. You know you called them a jerk and you don't care. You're not saying that because you didn't call them a jerk. You're calling them because you don't care if you said it or not. You just simply denial. You just simply say, I didn't do it. That's called gaslighting. When you don't care if it's a way of being amoral. You don't care if you're right or wrong. You don't care if you're telling the truth or not. Somebody accuses you of doing something that you know you did. Somebody accuses you of saying something that you know you said. You know you did it. You know you said it. And you just say, no, I didn't. It's called gaslighting. It's like saying you're crazy. You know know the person's not crazy, but you don't care. You just don't want to be held accountable for what you say. You say, I didn't do it. I didn't say it. Right? That's gaslighting. And it's something that narcissistic people, very, very selfish people, tend to do that. Donald Trump is a narcissistic person. So he gaslights. You can never corner a gaslighter. Ever, ever, ever. Because if you corner a person who's a gaslighter and you say, ha, 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 I got you now. Whoa, I got the evidence right here. You could have the person with a videotaped confession saying, yep, I said it. You could have the what's the term? Video evidence, audio evidence. Or you could have 100 people lining up saying, I heard that person say that. And the gaslighter was, I didn't say it. Because they ain't denying it because they didn't say it. They're denying it because that's just something they do when they get caught saying or doing something they shouldn't do. They simply say, I didn't do it. Right? There you go. So but you can never corner a person that'll just simply deny anything that they did. Donald Trump. Well, everybody's like, oh, Donald Trump's somebody said, then it's a trust issue. It's not really a trust issue because you can never trust a narcissist. Well, you can trust them never to be trustworthy, right? So here's the thing about Donald Trump. On its face, it appeared that Donald Trump was in a bad spot because he, I guess, promised the neocons, come the 8th of October, boy, I'm coming down on Putin. He's going to get it, and we're going to do tariffs for everybody and sanctions for Putin and everything, right? We're doing all this stuff. And basically dealing with traditional politicians, the Lindsey Grahams and people of the world, we're celebrating. We got him now. Come October 8th, he's going to have no choice. But they're dealing with Donald Trump. So come October 8th, he's gonna wiggle out. He's gonna like a greased eel. You ever try to pick up a fish, a slip, like fishing, a little old slippery fish. No matter how much you pick it up, it just slips out of your hands. I got that, darn it. Oh shoot, you're trying to pick this fish up and throw it overboard. Sorry, you can't grab the fish. It's just too slippery. That's Donald Trump. Think about a greased fish. He is a greased fish. You can't grab Donald Trump. You can't paint him into a corner. You can't corner him. You can't push him into a corner because if there's no other tactics left, he'll just gaslight you and say, I didn't do it. I didn't say, hey, Donald Trump, you said August 8th. You said 10 days. 10 days? Oh, I don't, no, you missed a zero. It was 100 days. I said 100 days. Yeah, that was it. So they thought they had a gaslighting narcissist pushed into a corner. Maybe at some point they'll figure out that he's never cornered, ever, never, ever, ever. And I would say this: the narcissistic person makes up these arbitrary deadlines. You know what? I've said this: the easiest person to get a deal with is a person that knows they won't keep the deal. A sociopath, a narcissist. That's the easiest person to make a deal with. You know why? Because they're always going to make a deal. Because they have no intention of keeping their word. So if you say, if Lindsey Graham, hey, Trump, how about we go with 10 days? Trump, sure. He got a deal with Trump because Trump knew he wasn't going to keep the deal. Hey, how about this, Trump? In 10 days, you'll come down. Lindsey Graham, you'll come down on Putin and you'll crush China's economy. Trump was like, sure, Lindsey, no problem. I'm down with it. Hey, John Bolton, all you neocons, what is it you want me to do? We want 10 days. 10 days is it, man. You got it. 10 days. Woo-hoo, they're going to get it. Putin's a dead man in 10 days. And they all walked away high-fiving, celebrating. Oh, we got Donald Trump this time. He's agreed to 10 days. They thought he was going to keep his word. So what happened was this. As it got closer to 10 days, Donald started thinking about it this. How he didn't think, I told them 10 days and I have to keep my word. That ain't the way narcissists think. He didn't intend on keeping his word when he said it. He said it to get them off his back. And now that it gets closer to the date, he then thinks to himself, now what am I going to do? He didn't think, oh, I'm backed into a corner. He's never backed into a corner. If nothing else, he'd wake up on August 8th and they'd say, well, today is the date. And he'd say, date for what? The date for, the tariffs, the bone-crushing sanctions. What bone-crushing sanctions? I have no idea what you're talking about. Yeah, it's all over the news. What news? I don't watch the news. Come on. Who watches the news anymore? Fake news. He just back out. But instead, what he did is a couple days beforehand, he's like, all right, what are we going to do? Witkoff, get over there. What am I going to do? Set up a meeting with Putin. And what? Just tell them. So, I don't know. What do the Russians want? Well, they want, here's a list. They gave us a list 2 years ago of the things they want. Tell them we'll give them everything on the list. But I don't think we can get away with that. Who cares? Tell them we'll give them everything on the list, set up a meeting with Putin, and we'll get these stinking neocons off my back. Well, what then? I don't know what then. Something then. We got, like people were saying, we got Epstein's all over me. I got the 8th of August. These maggots expect me to do something on the 8th. I ain't doing it. And I can't show the Epstein stuff because they'd kill me and you and everybody else. Can't do it. No Epstein stuff going out. Our bosses, our donors, all the people who are actually on the Epstein list, probably including Trump, Bill Clinton, you name it, they're all on the list. They're all like, hey, you can't show the list. Trump's like, of course I can't show the list. I'm not showing the list. And now, of course, they're probably saying to Trump, Donald Trump, why did you tell your MAGA people you would show the list? And Trump's like, because I needed them to vote for me. Yeah, that's how narcissists think. Why did you lie to that person? Because I needed them to do something. So that's just what I do. I lie to people when I need them to do something, so they'll do it. If I don't lie to them, they won't do it. That's the mentality that Trump has. If I don't lie to them, they won't do it. So I lied to them and I got their vote. I don't understand the problem you have with that. I had success, and he'd do it tomorrow and the day after and the day after. That's who he is. That's the tactics that he used. That ain't gonna change, right? So let's continue. So he gets Witkoff. Witkoff goes to the Russians. Now, here's what's hilarious. There are people who support the Russians, right? And they're like, I think the Russians are doing the right thing. In my opinion, I understand the dynamics of this. And here's what I said. If I were the president of Russia and the United States was at my border and NATO had expanded to my border and threatened me, I would have taken a similar action. I can't judge them for what they do or don't do. I'm just saying, if you are the leader of a if you are the leader of a world power and another world power comes to your doorstep, then the likelihood is you're going to try to push them back. It is what it is. Don't hate. You know what I mean? That's reality, right? Okay, let's continue. So there we have it. The Russians are like, here's the thing about the Russians. As I said, the people who are pro-Russian, I guess you'd say, or the pro-Russian people. I'm a pro-justice people. I'm a pro-peace person, right? And pro-justice. And as far as I'm concerned, it was unjust for NATO to expand to Russia's border, and justice is finding its way onto the Ukrainian battlefield, right? Anyway, let me continue. So Witkoff goes there, and who knows? The Russians said, yes, Witkoff has made an offer that's acceptable. Now, first of all, let me say this before you freak out. Oh my God, acceptable. The Russians are going to take a bad deal. Here's the deal. The word acceptable is not a Russian word. The word acceptable is an English word. So it has been, somebody said pro-human rights. I'm very aware to use that word, human rights, these days, because the genociders and Zionists use human rights. But I'm with you on that, the real human rights. So anyway, so the bottom line is the word acceptable. The Russian said Witkoff made an acceptable offer. Now, there are people who flipped out immediately. Oh my God, acceptable. That means the Russians are going to take whatever they offer. It's an English word. It's not a Russian word. What happens in translation is you take the closest word to something in another language and you transpose it over to the new language. So what they said was something that in America, the word acceptable is as close as we can get. And that doesn't imply, if somebody says, that's an acceptable offer, right? Let's say I want to sell my car for, I like to use this number, $10,000. And some guy comes up and says, I'll offer you 5. Next guy says, 7,500. I say, that's acceptable. We can talk. 7,500, yeah. Now I may just say, have put it at 10 and said, I'll take 8,500, right? 5 is not acceptable. We ain't get it. You get to 7,500. I'm trying to get to 8,500. Okay, 7,500. I'll drop to 9,500. You go to 7,750. Now at that point, I might say, okay, look, tell you what I'll do. I want to sell a car. You want to buy the car. You're at 7,750. I'm at 9,500. Tell you what we'll do. You get the 8,500, the car's gone. It's yours. If you can't get to 8,500, we can't do business. Now, we play a little bit, right? So 7,500 was acceptable. That didn't mean that's the final offer. I didn't say, well, you got a deal. I said, that's acceptable. That means we can sit down and talk. So for the people that are flipping out, oh my God, you know, the Trump's going to come in and he's going to offer an old Buick bumper, and Putin's going to say, I'll take it. You haven't been paying attention. That's all I'll say. If you think that's the way things are going to work out, you have not been paying attention. The Russian side has been consistent. They put in writing in December of 2021 what they wanted. A few months after the special military operation started, Macron contacted Vladimir Putin, and the Russian side said, we will achieve our goals either through diplomacy or force of arms, right? Consistently, week after week, month after month, what do we need? We've got to deal with the root causes. We've got to deal, and they've made it clear, NATO expansion. Their partners, Chinese, what have the Chinese said? Hey, they got to deal with the root causes. They're not getting out of this thing without dealing with NATO expansion. And certain things have to happen, things that NATO probably can't accept. But why would the Russians accept this meeting? It makes sense to me. It makes perfect sense to me for this reason. Because they're winning on the battlefield. Have you been paying attention lately? Here is, let's look at this. Well, I'll look at this and I'll read this to you. All right. There is a new Gallup poll. The vast majority of Ukrainians now support ending the conflict with Russia through peace negotiations rather than continued fighting, according to a new survey released Thursday by the US-based polling firm Gallup. The poll found that 69% of respondents favor a negotiated settlement to the war. 59%. A sharp reversal from 2022, when 73% said Ukraine should fight until victory. It is a near complete reversal. Despite the shift in opinion, few Ukrainians believe the fighting will end soon. Only 25% of the respondents say they think active hostilities are likely to stop within the next 12 months. 68% believe it's unlikely the conflict will end this year. There's other things going on. Let's see. Putin names a possible venue for talks with Trump. That's UAE. We also have articles that say, oh, Zelensky now says that the war says the war must end. So there's a lot of things that be out there in the ether. But here's the bottom line. The things that are being said in the ether are irrelevant. The discussion is irrelevant. What is relevant, right? If you and I are negotiating, but we're in a boxing ring, you know where the negotiations happen? With the gloves. In the end, somebody's going to be laying on the ground and somebody ain't. If we can reach a deal, fine. If not, somebody's going to get knocked out or win on points, right? Right now, what's going on? If you look on the battlefield, Ukrainians are deep in serious trouble. They are folding in town after town, and now some of their main towns are starting to fold. And right on the battlefield, Petrovsk, Chasov Yar, Seversk, the main fortified towns. Some of these towns they started fortifying, building cement bunkers and all this stuff since like 2014, 2015. They started preparing for war. Right. Let me add this, and this is important, something that's happened in recent days. There are a lot of reports that seem to have some, they got wings for sure. They're going out there, but there seems to be some basis to them that some Russian Spetsnaz, special forces guys, raided a Ukrainian, what do you call it? Like bunker, special operations bunker. And well, I'm calling it Ukrainian, a NATO special operations bunker, and they nabbed some Brits, right? So apparently there's a couple British officers that have been grabbed and they're being held by the Russians. And to be quite frank, if I'm the Russians, I ain't giving them up. Hey, can we have them back? Yeah, sure. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to try them. Now, I do know this, just to throw this out there so you'll know, you get sidetracked for just a minute. There were some British guys that were caught, some British mercenaries that were caught in Kursk. They were tried and given 19 years. Now, these guys, they're just plain old mercenaries. So these guys are high up the line. If I were the Russians, I would offer to trade. So sure, I would. I'd make them an offer that they couldn't possibly take. Can we have them back? Oh, we'd be happy to negotiate to give them back. What do you want? Here's a list of things that I know you ain't gonna give up. And you got to give them up and you'll give them back. We can't give all those things up. Well, I didn't say you could. In fact, I don't have a problem with that. Have a nice day. Don't call me back. Right. So apparently there's some high ranking guys. I'd say, look, they're comfortable. They're in their cell. They're getting beans and water every day. So they're well fed, far better fed than the Palestinians. What are you going to say about the Palestinians? You're starving them to stinking death. And I'm treating these people humanely. I'm giving them beans and water daily, which they'll continue to get in their Siberian work camp because I'm giving them life. They're going to get a trial. And if found guilty, which they will be, life on a Siberian work camp. But that's not a problem. You sent them there. That was your decision, not mine. You knew when you sent them there the potential. Your decision, not a problem. I'm okay with it. I could have just shot them, but we took them in. But we don't even need to talk about that anymore. They're military guys. They understood when they put themselves in that position that they could be killed, they could be captured. They took the chance. They're military men. We respect military men. So we made you an offer. We had a talk. It didn't work out. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes you get, deal or no deal, the game show, right? No deal this time. Toodles. Have a nice day. We'll send you pictures. Tell their families they love them. We're not going to kill them. We're not going to harm them. Beans and water every day. We'll give them bread on the weekends and maybe the holidays. Other than that, they're going to be on a Siberian work camp, turning big blocks of ice into little blocks of ice. They're going to have a giant ice pick, and we're going to point them to a glacier and say, see that glacier over there? Yeah. When you get finished with that glacier, oh, can we go home then? No. There's another glacier behind that one. And when you get finished with that glacier, you go to the next glacier. We're going glacier to glacier to glacier. One of these days, they'll find you frozen into the glacier. Maybe 40,000 years from now, they'll say, look at this, some guy, and he has weird insignia on him, frozen into a glacier, perfectly preserved. That's your fate, buddy. That's what you chose. When you set foot in Ukraine, it was as good as done. It was inevitable. Now, you could talk and tell us everything you know, and we'll think about reducing your sentence. We'll even think about getting you home once we follow it up. But you can talk and tell us everything, but it don't matter because things ain't. I don't think you're going to do it. You're a military guy, and I respect you for not talking. Adios. That's that. Forget it. So anyway, we continue. So what we got is we have I think this term has been called a reversal of fortunes, right? But not really. You and I already know long ago that this was inevitable. We've been saying for I don't know how long, they didn't really ever believe that Ukraine could beat Russia. That was always what's the term I'm looking for? Public relations move. The truth is they overthrew the government of Ukraine. And when the United States overthrew the government of Ukraine and put puppets in charge of Ukraine, the plan was we will use Ukraine and the Ukrainian people as a weapon against Russia. Just like they want to use the Philippines and Taiwan as a weapon against China, just like they're always using a country as a weapon against another country if they can. And this was the fate of Ukraine, unfortunately. And Ukraine bought into it, and now they're paying a very, very dear price. It's a sad thing to think about, but it's just reality. It is what it is. It's sad. It's unfortunate. We don't want to see anybody struggle or deal with a bad life. But when you make a Faustian deal, buddy, what I always say, when you make a deal with the devil comes for your soul, right? Those are all the movies where somebody made a deal with the devil, right? In these movies, and sooner or later, they lost the deal, and Ukraine's lost the deal. They've gotten to the part where the devil comes for their soul, right? Or the bear comes to swallow them whole. Either way you look at it, it ain't a good spot to be in, right? You have been a puppet for the empire, and you know what? There's no honor amongst thieves. The empire ain't going to stand out for you. The empire ain't going to go, oh, poor Ukraine, they're in trouble now. I guess we'll make a deal and get them out of this mess. No, you're expendable. You're always expendable. But, so what I'm saying is this. Let me get to this part. So what I'm saying is, from the Russians' perspective, why wouldn't they meet with Trump? They're marking time. They're killing time, right? Right now, the decisive actions are not going to happen when Putin and Trump talk, unless Trump folds or something. And even then, the Russians ain't going to trust that. Trust but verify, right? They're not going to trust what the Americans say. Who is, right? I suspect they're going to say, we had a great meeting. It was a good meeting. It was very respectable. And what we've decided to do is assign some groups of committees of groups of committees, and they will get together and determine another meeting time and a list of things that we're going to talk about during that meeting, and a list of things to create another list of things for the next meeting after that. And then we'll put a committee to look into the committee that made the list, and they won't stop until we're all asleep, because all they're doing is jogging in place. Jumping jacks, man. They're doing jumping jacks. They're doing jogging in place. It's great exercise, but it never really gets you anywhere. You never really get anywhere. And that's the idea. They already understand they can't make a deal with Trump. And of course, if Putin meeting with Trump, he's going to have, 10 bodyguards behind him. So the bottom line is they're supposed to meet in the UAE. Trump is desperate for a deal, but he ain't getting one. And look, let's go this. In theory, could he get some kind of a deal? Okay. Yes, but not the kind of deal Trump wants. But here's the thing. If you understand Trump, he doesn't care what kind of deal he gets. He doesn't even care if it's a deal. He just wants something he can call a deal. Trump wants, he wants what he got with von der Leyen. What did he get with von der Leyen? He got a deal, where he said the Europeans are going to spend money they don't have to buy stuff we can't provide. They're going to spend $750 billion on liquefied natural gas. Now we've only sold 310 for 3 years. Now we only sell like 310 billion every 3 years or whatever. Basically it's like more than double what we actually sell over that period of time. But they've agreed to do it. Now, of course, they don't have the money for that, and they're going to invest 600 billion, but they don't really have it. And they're saying they're hoping that their corporations who are going out of business and getting poorer and don't have it, they're hoping they'll do it, but that probably ain't going to happen. So let's go out here and announce this deal, and we'll call it a big win. And that's what he did. He announced the deal and he called it a big win. That's the kind of deal that Trump gets. The deal of the century, the deal that ain't real. He don't care. He wants to announce a deal, not to have a real deal. And then people can celebrate the deal that he announced. And he wants to meet with Putin. And Putin will probably say something like, yeah, here's what we're willing to do. Granted, we didn't get the root issues straightened out, but we're moving towards them. But here's what we're going to do. We're willing to stop long-term strikes again for 30 days. What do they care? They're beating the crap out of they'll do short distance strikes. They don't have to do long distance strikes. They'll do little short distance strikes. We're going to stop long distance strikes. And by long distance, we mean nothing over 2,000 kilometers. Anything under 2,000, we're going to consider them short distance. And by the way, we haven't done anything over 2,000 kilometers yet. But just in case we do, we'll stop. He'll make a fake deal that doesn't exist. And of course, he knows on day one that the Ukrainians will not hold up to the deal anyway. So what does he care? So he'll be like, guys, let's just keep making 1,000 or whatever we're making drones a day, and we'll just stack them all up. And for 30 days, shoot down most of the incoming stuff. Just keep doing what you're doing with the Ukrainian stuff. Get all your target banks all together. And on the 30th day, we'll plaster every one of them. And we'll go back to it. But meanwhile, we're defeating them on the ground. We don't have to do long storm. They can now fly bombers because of the lack of air cover of air defense. They'll fly bombers in. They're dropping fab whatever bombs. So bottom line is they will simply continue to do what they're doing because they're winning on the ground. They're winning on the battlefield. And that's where the victory is won. At this point, this one's not going to be decided by diplomacy. It will be very beneficial to mark time. And I got to add this. That ain't even a big meeting. You know what the big meeting is? So apparently Trump, I'm going to gigantic tariffs on China and India and Brazil, right? So realistically, this is a war on BRICS. It's like, let's go after the BRICS people. So apparently, some people from India are going to China. Apparently, there's going to be some meeting of higher ups in the BRICS to decide a collective response. That's the meeting to watch. That's the meeting to watch. Look, Putin and Trump, I mean, it'll get airtime. It's Putin and Trump. The liberals will go crazy. We knew that Trump was a Putin bot, and Russia gate is real, and there we go. They'll go bananas. The people in Moscow, a lot of them, the people who are scared, I knew it. Putin's going to take a deal from Trump, and he's going to get an old ham sandwich and a bumper off a 57 Buick, and he's just going to take that. And so everybody's going to go berserk, and nothing's really going to happen, except like a 30-day long distance strike that nobody's going to actually pay any attention to, and neither side is going to maintain the deal, right? Nothing going to happen. Trump will offer something, I think. Maybe he'll offer something that the Russians will take. They'll get Trump. They'll give. Let me say this: Trump's in the corner, and in a way, Putin's throwing him a lifeline. Hey, let's meet. Come on. I'll throw you, why? Because later on he'll owe me. We'll see if we can work this out later. But I'm gonna throw him a little bit of a lifeline right now, right? And it benefits Russia to throw him a lifeline, right? We'll throw him a lifeline. Yeah, exactly. Somebody else said this, Vincent, kicking the can down the road, marking time, killing time. Throw Trump a lifeline. Trump will be happy. We'll kill a little bit of time. We'll meet in the UAE, and meanwhile we're blasting living crap out of the Ukrainians on the ground. That's what matters. But watch this BRICS meeting. India's heading to China. And the talk is a collective response. What now? That will be truly interesting. That's a real meeting for two reasons. Number one, because of the enmity, the long-term enmity between India and China. And I'll say this, something you need to understand. Inside India, there's a lot of anti-China propaganda. And some people with knowledge have been saying to me, look, it's going to be difficult for China to bury the hatchet, for India to bury the hatchet with China, because they've done so much anti-China propaganda inside of India that it's going to be hard to overcome that. Enter Donald Trump, right? Stage right. Donald Trump comes in and pisses off the Indians so bad, and pisses off the Indian people so bad, you got an emotional, angry response to that, and that gives cover. I love that word. It gives political cover for the Indian government to then say, I think we better talk to the Chinese. And so everybody has cover, and now instead of the Indians and the Chinese like fighting it out, the India and Chinese can now say, you know what? We've had enough of this crap. Lula, how you doing there? We've had enough of this crap. We need to always respond uniformly. When you think about this, you got 1.5 billion roughly people. China and India, you got 3 billion people. Now, when you add, what do they got? A couple 100 million in Brazil. Brazil, I believe, is either the fifth largest. It's one of two things. I think Brazil is the 5th largest and the 5th most highest populated country in the world, either the 5th or the 8th, but I'm pretty sure it's the 5th, right? Major countries, hundreds of millions. So you've got these gigantic countries with either tremendous economic output now or tremendous economic potential. Okay. And so you've got all of these. Now you've got some other BRICS countries. I don't know how some of the others will do, but you've got other countries, BRICS countries and partners. You've got, like, what is it? Indonesia, Malaysia, these kinds of countries, Algeria. You've got a number of countries, right? And what happens if these countries all together and say come together and say we're BRICS? If the USA hits the heads of BRICS, here's what we're all going to do. So they can all say, see, and this is what's important. The Trump people want to, they want to negotiate with each country separately and, push what happens if all of these countries say none of us will negotiate separately anymore? We'll negotiate as a block. We'll make deals as a block. Whatever you do to one of us, we all respond the same way. We'll all have the same response. So now you got 3-4 billion people. You got at least half of the world saying, whatever you do to us, this half of the world. What happens when India, China, Brazil, and several other countries, probably Russia, several other countries all say, look, Trump, here's the tariffs on America. Be whatever the number is. This is what we're all doing. We won't, none of us will sell you any of the following things. None of us will buy any of the following things from you. Or we're all going to buy our soybeans from Brazil right now. We're all going to buy our pork from wherever, Russia. You know what I mean? We're all going to do this. And they all come together and say, collective response. At that point, they're extremely powerful. And at that point, what it does is it thwarts the whole strategy of Trump's people saying, we're going to divide all the countries up and then we'll make deals. Because when they make those deals, one of the things they're doing is playing one against the other, right? So I'm watching not so much. I mean, look, you got to watch any Trump-Putin meetings. Of course you do. These are two powerful nuclear powers, and these are two very powerful, very charismatic leaders. One of them who is a bit unhinged these days, and the other one who's been pretty steady, a steady statesman who is extremely predictable, right? And one of them is predictable in that he's a chaos bomb, as Mark Sleboda likes to say. So my point being, there's more than one big meeting in the world. And one of them might be more important than the other. Maybe. I don't know. I think the BRICS meeting is the one I'm really going to be. I'm really curious about that. We don't know for sure that the Trump meeting is going to happen. Apparently, they're working on it. But is it really going to happen? We will see. And what's going to be interesting is when that happens, one of the things Trump's often responding to is the internal pressure, right? And so you're going to see all the media go crazy. Trump's got to stand up to Putin. He's got to put Putin in his place. It's going to be Trump's got to go to Putin as the power guy with all the power and force Putin to do X. When the fact of the matter is this, and we had to get here sooner or later, NATO, the U.S. proxy umbrella corporation to control the foreign policy of Europe. That was the plan. We can argue whether it's there going to happen or not, or whether it's real. But here's the reality. NATO squared off against Russia, and it's losing. And they did everything they could to win that war, and they are now facing a catastrophic loss. And as many people have said, it's extremely dangerous because you've got two nuclear powers, and of course, one of them is going to have to accept a loss against the other. And the one that's going to have to accept the loss ain't Russia, because Russia's winning in Ukraine. And it was a proxy war, and Trump's trying to do everything he can to dance out of it. But the bottom line is it will be the absolute catastrophic loss, the catastrophic loss. Look, the U.S. is tangled with, usually it was Libya or someplace like that, Grenada, some small island country with a half a dozen people and barely, a police department, much less a military. All right, we'll attack them and take them down. But we haven't tangled with the big boys. So the U.S. says, all right, we're going to overthrow Ukraine and we're going to use Ukraine. Then we're going to an active war with Russia. A catastrophic loss, and now let me just say this. You're not going to go to the border of a superpower and win. Okay. You ain't going to do that. You're not going to fight. You're not, superpowers are generally very much able to defend their borders, first and foremost. So you're going to go to their border and fight them. You ain't winning that one. They were never going to win. There was never a chance that Ukraine was going to win. Never a possibility. The war wasn't even set up for them to win. But now, when all the Europeans the European leadership has put everything into it. They put their future, they put their present, they put their finances, their political, everything in this. We've got to win. We can't possibly lose in a war that they can't possibly win. And that's the danger of it, because people are like, oh my God, will they go nuclear? Well, I think right now Trump's trying to dance his way out of it. I don't know if he can. But the other problem is this. And let me say this for NATO. Yes, Ukraine is a proxy, but it really is a proxy. Fair enough. And as a country, it doesn't have agency because the U.S. has taken over Kiev and put in a puppet government. All true. All absolutely true, right? But there are still people there. And those people as individuals have agency. And the fact that we're seeing polls where the people are saying we don't want to fight. See, here's the thing about it. If the people don't want to fight, let's say NATO and quote the US says, okay, we've got to go in and the Ukrainian military is crumbling. And so we got to go in and join them and fight the Russians. Okay. But what happens if the Ukrainians don't want to fight? And the Ukrainians are like, what do you mean you got to come in and help us fight the Russians? We want the hell out. 69% of the Ukrainians want a negotiated settlement. When this thing starts to crumble, and I think the Russians all along, as they were poking holes in this thing, right? There's holes, a lot of holes in the dam, water's leaking everywhere. All along, I think the slow movement, whether it was intentional or not, I don't know. I won't call it intentional. That's the way they fight. But how about we go with inevitable? The inevitability was Mr. Anderson. The inevitability was, of course, an allusion to the Matrix. The inevitability was that the Ukrainians would crumble, would collapse, would fall apart. Therefore, there's nothing for NATO to come in and prop up. Yes, we're going to come in and join the Ukrainian army and prop them up. But what happens if there ain't no Ukrainian army to prop up and there's just a bunch of Ukrainians? All right, the Ukrainians, we're going to come help you and we're going to finish fighting Russia. And the Ukrainians are like, we want a negotiated settlement. We're tired of war. We want out. So I think what you're looking at is NATO is going to be in a position where I've said this from the beginning of the war. You can go back and check. There will be nothing to prop up. Nothing to join, nothing to help, nothing to arm. This thing's going to fall apart. I think when the Russians come for Odessa, it's going to be a matter of there's nobody there to guard it. There's nothing. They're not going to have to blow up Odessa, and I think the Russians will take Odessa. They're going to take what they want, and they're going to ensure that they've got a buffer zone that they want. Even as an example, afterwards, Poland, let's say Poland wants Western Ukraine. Who the heck wants Western Ukraine? This Nazi infested crap hole. I'll put it like this. If Poland takes Western Ukraine, they'll try to give it back within a couple years when they realize what they got on their hands. Right. So my point being, I think that the Russians in all of this are marking time, are marching in place, are going to continue to negotiate. And it's not a false negotiation. When I say they're killing time, it's not, no, we're negotiating like the Iran negotiating with Trump, where he said, well, we're only negotiating so we can get them to close. We only negotiated so we could get them to close their eyes so we could hit them in the back of the head. Right. I'm going to negotiate to put you to sleep. So when you look the other way, I can hit you in the head. That's not what the Russians are doing. It's not a fake or a false negotiation. It is truly negotiation for this reason. This is why it truly is negotiation. While I'm sure they understand that the catastrophic defeat that they are about to hand to NATO cannot be easily accepted. But at the same time, they also are honest in that saying, we've given you all along what our conditions are. And even though we know you won't meet those conditions, if you did, we'd take the deal. That's what the Russians are saying. If you took our conditions and we could actually do the things necessary to make this happen, we take it. If the Russians, now they know they ain't going to get it. And they know that if they got the deal, they'd say, okay, good. We need to make sure that this thing won't flare up again, and that you keep your word. We'll bring in North Korean and Chinese troops, whatever. We'll bring in African troops. We'll bring in troops to make sure that they keep the peace, peacekeepers from our allies, not yours. Right? So we're going to make this thing work. If the Russians already know they ain't going to get that. But if they got it, they'd take it. So it's honest. It's honest. They just know they ain't. So they're just going to defeat their enemy and maintain course and speed. And right now, they threw Trump a little bit of a lifeline that he needed. But here's the deal next that we need to start thinking about and thinking about soon from all perspectives, and that is the extreme danger of the obvious catastrophic defeat for NATO. There's no way around this right now. NATO has two issues. Number one, internally, I don't know if you've been in any NATO countries lately or NATO affiliated countries. Everything's blue and yellow. Everything's the color of the Ukrainian flag. Everything they could to brainwash the people in their countries to believe that somehow the working class in their country was, had some kind of camaraderie with a Nazi infested crap hole called Ukraine. Absolutely not. Right. But everything's blue and yellow. The buses are blue and yellow. The flags are blue and yellow. Walmart's blue and yellow. Everything's the color of Ukraine. They've done everything they can to brainwash their people that we are 100% aligned with Ukraine and Ukraine's going to get crushed. And therefore, the people in these various countries understand that their government is completely solidly behind Ukraine, and that they believe, yes, our government's going to make sure Ukraine wins and stands up to the Russians, whatever, right? So they have brainwashed their people into believing that they should be aligned with this proxy war. So the people are like, yes, my government's going to do everything they can. Ukraine's going to win. What happens when Ukraine loses? What are they going to say to their people? All of these people are going to be going like, hey, you told us Ukraine was going to win and there's no possibility that Russia would lose, and Ukraine has collapsed and Russia's taken everything that they wanted, and you don't have any power to stop them. There's nothing you can do. What's going on with that anyway? And they don't have an answer. Oh, by the way, my economy got wiped out, and we spent hundreds of billions of dollars, and we're suffering today. And we stopped taking Russian fuel, which was cheaper. Now, when we're totally screwed, our future screwed, our economically things are going down the drain. And you told us you had to do this. Oh, by the way, you told us that if the Russians won Ukraine, that they would continue to attack Poland and Germany and France, and they continue on to the English Channel, and none of that's happening. Everything you told us was a lie. Now, the people in the chat and me are, by the way, saying, everything they tell you is a lie. We've been saying that since COVID. We've been saying that since before COVID. So none of us will be surprised. We're going to be like, they're going to be like, everything they told us was a lie. And we're going to be like, oh, duh, yeah, the government told you a lie. Shocking. Who would have ever seen that coming? Except that we told you every day they're lying to you. Perhaps now you can listen. Right. So that's going down the drain. Ukraine's going down the drain. NATO, at that point, what do they do? What is NATO? Have you seen what they're doing in Moldova? Same thing they did in Romania. Same thing they did in France. Same thing they're doing probably to the AFD. Now they're like, okay, if anybody, we're for democracy. We're all about democracy. Unless you vote for somebody who doesn't agree with us, then you get no democracy. So they're doing all of that stuff, infuriating the masses, and then they're going to lose. And might I add, even if they wanted to join in, they got nothing to do it. They've sent all of their tanks, they've sent their gear, they've sent their planes, they sent everything they have they have their missiles, you name it, their mortars, their their bullets, their artillery rounds. They've sent that all to Ukraine. It's either been used up by the Ukrainians or blown up by the Russians. So they don't have anything to even enter the war. They couldn't fight anybody if they wanted to. So they're going to be locked down where they don't have anything to fight, even if they wanted to. They're going to be losing a catastrophic war. They're going to have their people looking at them saying, you told us you were going to win, and you told us we had to suffer like this. And for God's sake, it seems like it was all a lie. Oh my God, those crazy conspiracy theorists were right all along. The same people who talked during COVID, they're right again. Something strange here. I don't understand this. They're always right. Okay. They're going to be facing that. And of course, that's going to mean some governments may collapse. That's going to mean electoral defeat. That's going to mean voting for people who say you've been lied to. They got a big problem on their hands, and it ain't going to get better. And how does NATO continue to exist? What did NATO say it's supposed to be? We're here to protect you from Russia. Well, first of all, NATO lost the war to Russia. Secondly, they've told us that Russia's going to come get us and they're going to attack all of us and they're going to lose. And Russia's not attacking anybody else after that. You told us they were going over the borders and keep coming, and they're not doing that. And it seems like some of the things we've been told weren't true. They're in a world of steep and serious trouble, politically, militarily, Economically, they have lost. You know what happened? They launched a full spectrum war, and they're losing a full spectrum war. You launch a full spectrum war, that means if either you win or you lose. If you lose, you lost everything. And of course, what's going to happen? The rest of these countries are going to be looking around saying, hey, you know what? Who's the big dog? Who's the big man on the hill? It ain't going to be Trump. It ain't going to be able to be the US. You got beaten. So everybody's going to be flocking to the winner. Everybody loves a winner. Meanwhile, the things you have taken has strengthened BRICS, and I have strengthened BRICS, and BRICS is going to grow and get stronger. And we're on the verge of some kind of, if not, we were already in some kind of recession that will continue down. Just disaster after disaster after disaster. And of course, India and China are going to be friends again. Oh boy, boy, boy. Now, I'll say this. The neocons are going to try to blame everything on Trump. Sure, is Trump incompetent boob to some extent and a narcissist and all those things? Absolutely. But Trump don't run this empire. What I always say, Trump didn't come into this political system. He came out of it. Trump doesn't run this thing. And you know what I think Trump's going to end up saying? He's going to say to the neocons, I tried to tell you we should have got out. He may be the one that does the I told you so's. Knowing Trump, who don't care, he has nothing to lose. When everything falls apart and they lose, you know what Trump will probably say? They'll be like, oh no, Trump's backed into a corner now. He's had a catastrophic defeat. Trump, you're backed into a corner. You have a catastrophic defeat. Trump's going to say, what do you mean? I told him. I told them they were going to lose. I told them they should have listened to me. They should have got a deal. That's what Trump will do. He will back out. You think he's going to take accountability? You think he's going to say, oh, I shouldn't have done this. I made errors. Ain't happening. He's going to do what he always does. He's going to blame everybody around him. Trump's going to say, I told him this was Biden's war. This was a mistake. I told him we should have took a deal with Putin. I told him we should have did this. If only they'd have listened to me, this wouldn't have happened. That's what Trump will do. Guaranteed. Guaranteed. This thing's going to fall apart, and that's the direction we're going. So don't have any belief or have any belief that either the Russians, the Vladimir Putin people, or the BRICS have any thoughts that Putin and Trump are going to sit down and iron out a deal and shake hands. No, the Russians know that ain't going to happen. They have nothing to lose. They're going to meet with Trump, kill some time while they continue bashing Ukrainian troops to pieces. They got time. And then they'll make another meeting. Oh, that was a great meeting we had with Trump, and we've agreed to talk about starting the grain deal again. There we go. What do you get? Did you come up with anything? Sure. We want to talk about we're going to give the Ukrainians some dead bodies, and they'll give us some dead bodies, and then we're going to start talking about the grain deal again, or grain, whatever, I don't know, maybe fish, clams, whatever the heck, timber, coal, all that stuff. We're going to talk about everything. We're going to talk about sending planes direct flight from Moscow to DC to New York. Ain't happening. We're going to talk about getting back all of the the diplomatic properties that Obama took. Think about this. Ever since Trump came in, he says, let's talk about the Russians about direct flights. Are the direct flights happen? Oh, we need to get these diplomatic properties that were seized under Obama back to the Russians. Have they been sent back to the Russians? They've basically the minimal things, the tiniest of things, the easiest things that Trump could pick up a phone call and say, State Department, yeah, give the Russians back their properties immediately. Whatever. We want to allow the Russian flights back and forth again. So talk to whoever it is, the FCC, the ACC, the MSNBC, whoever they are. Talk to all of them and say, Trump could pick up a phone call and do that. Hasn't happened, has it? If they can't get the simplest things done, they sure as heck can't get the complicated things done. Don't fool yourself. The Russians know that. But the Russians have the legacy of the Soviet Union. Trust me, if you think you're going to out-bureaucrat the Russians, that's a battle you ain't going to win. They wrote the book on bureaucracy. They know how to put committees together to talk about committees. They know how to kill time. They know how to do diplomacy. They know how to do long-term diplomacy. That's all we're looking at. Long-term diplomacy. Now, I'll say this, I'm in and up, but let me say this. Last but not least, let's not forget the important thing, and that is the starvation of the Palestinians, the horrible, unthinkable war crime that's being created by the Netanyahu cabal and the Trump cabal and all of the Western cabals. Let's not forget that. Let's continue to work on that and to do everything that we can to support those who are working on it. I think that is the moral obligation of all of us. So let's continue to work on that. I don't know if you saw it, but let's see. Clayton, here we go. Uh, in case you haven't seen this, it's not all over the news, but it's in a lot of places in the news, and that is boom. Death to IDF written on Clayton Street, where a fire damaged multiple cars. I think the place is Clayton, Mississippi. The bottom line is, apparently what happened was, as I don't know for sure, but it appears that what I'm seeing is there were some people who either had been in the IDF or some had relationship to the IDF. Some people didn't like it. They came in, they burned their cars and wrote death to the IDF. There was action taken against these people. Now, you know me, I'm a person who, I'm not for violent action and all that kind of stuff. I'm simply saying that angry and furious, and you can kind of see that these kinds of events will be expanding. People are furious. They're unhappy with what's happening. They feel powerless to stop it. So the likelihood is that when, what did Martin Luther King say? Something about riots are the voice of the unheard, or the expression of the voice of the unheard. Bottom line is, when you see people start taking these kind of things into their own hands, acting out in anger, I think you're starting to see the beginning, the rousing of a kinetic movement, and by that I mean actions that will be taken by people who feel there's nothing else they can do, whether it's burning things or, God forbid, other types of violent actions. Certainly, I'm never going to condone violence. I'm simply saying this: it's inevitable. These kind of things are inevitable, and so we'll keep an eye out on it. And when you see start looking around and you see the temperature raising to the extent it is, when you start seeing the anger start to rise to the level of it is regarding the starvation and brutality that's being waged against the Palestinians, you understand that people are going to get angry and that all kinds of things are potential to happen. And I'm not good, I'm not with violence because, inevitably innocent people get hurt, innocent people get killed. And, the government understands the language of violence and they will act out in a violent way. Sometimes you use these things as excuses to crack down on people, but it is what it is. I'll just report on it and leave it at that. And, I think that's an important issue we need to follow up on. All right. Let's see. Do we have any super chats? If there are any super chats, I will speak on. Let's see. Let us go. Here's one. Let's go. Chris Shipley, stack sats against the machine. I wish I knew what that meant. Stack sats against the machine. I guess that must be some kind of a riddle that I have to figure out. So thank you very much, Chris Shipley. Let's continue here. Are there any? Yeah, there's more super chats, and we're going to get to them. We're going to get to them. Oh, here we go. We got another one. Vivian says, thank you for doing the show. I was waiting. Thank you, Vivian, for waiting. I am at an undisclosed location. In a bunker. Always in a bunker at an undisclosed location. That's where you can find me. All right. How about we go there? Nick Poser, super sticker. Thank you there. Nick Purser. I don't know what the case is. I think that's everybody. Let me look for Rockfin. Yep, that's it. All right, thanks a lot, everybody. I'll end by saying this. What's this? That's weird. I will end by saying this. Most importantly, um, uh, if you can afford it, whether it's Patreon, buy me a coffee or anything like that, PayPal, whatever. If you can afford it, I certainly appreciate everybody who donates to keep the channel going. Whatever the case, follow me on Telegram, Rockfin, all that kind of stuff. And very importantly, make sure you share this on all your social media platforms. I'm out.